It is the 1700s. You have been brought from the great country of Britain to Massachusetts as an indentured servant. Just 2 months ago, you agreed to a 5-year contract of unpaid labor in exchange for your trip to America, a new land brimming with opportunity. So far, you can only describe the experience as terrible. You are housed, yes, but it is shoddy, run-down housing. You will eventually have freedom, yes, but now, you are completely bound. Today's work is long and hard. The lack of substantial rest makes you only yearn for one thing: some food. And eventually, as time toils on, a lunch break comes to your relief. You sit at a table, fork and knife in hand, and wait for someone to bring you your food. Suddenly, something is plopped on your plate. You look down with anticipation, but then you start to gag. Someone has given you possibly the worst thing you could have wished for: absolute garbage, peasant food, fertilizer. You'd rather dig around in a trash can for some scraps than eat this. Someone has given you lobster. When British colonists first arrived in Massachusetts Bay, lobsters were extremely copious. Supposed 2-foot-tall mounds of lobsters were recorded to constantly wash up on shores. Because of their abundance, they were an accessible food source, something that colonists in the area could collect with relative ease. All they had to do was go to the beach with a bucket and pick up some of those clawed fellas. Because of this, New England colonists would come to rely on lobster as their main food source during times of scarcity. Their availability, however, also put them in a negative light. As humans, we love to eat things that are rare or extravagant. It is human nature to correlate the amount of effort it takes to make a meal with the amount of enjoyment we'll get from it. Like I said, at the time, lobsters literally washed up in giant piles along the coast, so it isn't surprising that colonists began to view them as symbols of poverty. In 1651, William Bradford, the founder of the Plymouth colony, once tried to emphasize its terrible conditions with the following quote. I'm going to do this in a funny voice. "The best dish they could present their friends with was a lobster." They mean this negatively, by the way. "Without anything else but a cup of fair spring water." You know, nowadays, there are people that would literally kill another person to have this same meal. As America began to grow out of its infancy, lobster became more and more reviled. Previous European beliefs had deemed it a lesser version of meat that didn't give the appropriate nutrients. In some ways, this is true. Lobster does not, in fact, provide the same benefits as a steak or some other form of meat. However, playing devil's advocate here, it does contain a lot of omega-3s, which is better than nothing. Lobster populations would still remain relatively high at this point in time. Because of this, it was dirt cheap. This was bad, because, as we all know, big number meant good food, while small number meant bad food. Salt was further poured on the wound, as farmers would feed lobster to their pigs and other livestock, while also using the shells as fertilizer. Such circumstances gave the food an incredibly negative connotation. In New England, lobster was widely served to indentured servants, slaves, prisoners, and others of the lower class. Some indentured servants got so sick of the crustacean that, in their contracts, they explicitly said they wouldn't eat lobster more than 2 times a week. New England folklore even tells of a riot from prisoners and indentured servants against the shellfish, forcing legislature to adopt new laws that would put legal limits on lobster consumption. The hatred of lobster cannot be understated in early America. No one wanted anything to do with the sea creature. It was kicked to the wayside, and the only people that willingly ate it were literal swine. But don't give up now, little lobster, because here comes the Lobster Boom. Lobster would begin its meteoric rise in the 19th century. At the time, lobster consumption was concentrated in New England. Transporting lobster further inland was not an option, as lobsters couldn't be quickly and safely transported in a way that would keep the lobsters alive and fresh. Because of this, stigma was mainly limited to the northern coast of America, as those were the only people that have actually tasted lobster. Basically, those who consumed lobster absolutely hated it, but this group of people was actually relatively small. A large chunk of America simply never tasted lobster, and therefore it was very probable that it wasn't actually a bad dish. Instead, it was more likely that the New Englanders had simply just gotten sick of it. As technology progressed and meat transportation improved via innovations such as railways, lobster began to end up on the plates of other diners who didn't share this stigma. Improvements to meat canning would also allow for the adequate preservation of lobster, furthering its diaspora among the general American people. Astonishingly, by the mid-1800s, lobster meat had become the most popular canned good in the US. By the 1900s, chefs in the northern US began to experiment with the meat, sparsely incorporating it into dishes which soon caught the desires and palates of a whole new species: rich people. Wealthy individuals in Boston and New York began seeking out the lobster to incorporate into their diets, with some even demanding for the mass shipment of lobsters directly from Maine to their homes. In the 1920s, lobster would meet bread. The lobster roll is first recorded being served in a small cafe in Connecticut. The sandwich, being known for its simplicity and portability, was an easy way for the average working man to easily slurp down on some lobster. High levels of tourism sparked by the post-World War II economic boom would transform the lobster roll, and subsequently lobster, into a regional staple. Those that chose to travel to Massachusetts and other New England states loved the sandwich for its convenience and emphasis of the meat, which they saw as a local delicacy. Through a lucky break in the late 1900s, the lobster roll became an overnight sensation, with an experimental feature in a high-end NYC restaurant. In 2006, the lobster roll would be deemed the dish of the year by Bon Appetit. As demand continued to grow, so did the price. The population of lobster had also been on a considerable decline since the early days of Massachusetts. No longer can you go to the beaches and pick out a nice plump lobster from the old lobster mound. Now, modern-day lobster has been paired with extravagance, a food to only be consumed on special occasion or by rich people. It has become a symbol of prosperity and has cemented itself in American culture. Looking at lobster today, it is ridiculous to even think that it was once dumped into pig troughs. I believe there is a good lesson to be learned here. It is possible that now everyone sees you as trash or pig slop. It's possible that no one wants anything to do with you, that they will make contracts just so they'll see your face less often. But it is also very possible that your haters do not represent the majority. Expand your horizons, stretch out your arms, find your support, and you too will have your lobster boom.